Good evening, everyone. Am I audible? Please put a thumbs up if I'm audible. Okay. Hi, everyone. Good, nice to meet you. My name is Vanshika, and today I'll be conducting a workshop on cognitive biases. Before I go into today's workshop, I would like to know how your day is going since it's almost the end of the day, right? So, out of 1 to 10, what's the energy like today? Or like at the moment. You can put it in the chat box or maybe um, use the reaction. Okay, 7, that's good. What about the others? There are a lot of people. I wouldn't just see two people saying 7, right? Anyone else? Oh, I was just asking, how is your energy level like out of 1 to 10? Okay, I'm seeing a 7 and an 8. That's good. So, um, the energy looks good right now. If in case I'm going too fast or too slow, do let me know. And whoever's taking 3 or 5, I hope your evening gets better or you get a good night's rest or a good week. Um, right. So before I jump right in into the workshop, I would ask like just a very quick question and you need to answer immediately. So if everyone can please open your chat boxes so you can reply as fast as you can. All right, it's no competition, it's not a race, it's just that I don't want anybody to overthink on this question. So the question is, if not on the chat box, you can raise your hands. All right. The question is, do you think you are a rational decision maker or not? Okay. Anyone else? You guys can raise your hands as well. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of yes, sometimes no, a lot of mixed answers, sometimes not as well. So, this is a perfect response. That's something I was looking for. This makes today's workshop even more interesting because by the end of the session, you might change your answers or you might change the way you think. Now, since it's a 1 hour workshop, if in case I'm going too fast, you have to stop me in between and ask your questions if I don't make sense anywhere. Or if you're comfortable waiting until the end of the session, then we can do like a long area just to answer everybody's question. All right. If that works, please take a thumbs up. All right. So one second. All right. We e- sometimes like when you see and like you scroll through online reels or something, and then you see your favorite celebrity holding a skincare product smiling confidently, and then you'll go like, oh, this seems like really interesting and I would like to buy it. So it could be with food or with products or anything. It could be something that's very um, a small object or a big thing like a car or something. Your celebrity is showing that, oh, look at this car, it's really good. Most of the people, they go into like, I want to buy it because the celebrity is showing it off. So this act is something called as halo effect, and it's where we subconsciously transfer our positive feelings about the celebrity to the product, even though we know nothing about its ingredients or what the product is about. Is the is it actually worth getting it or not? But we buy it because our brain loves shortcuts. With this, we'll jump into understanding what does biases mean, right? So biases are basically preconceived notions or opinions that influence on how one thinks and acts, often in a subjective way. Meaning, they tend to come from unconscious assumptions from their past or their personal experiences. It could even be the cultural norms, and this can influence their thoughts and behaviors in a variety of contexts. Now, even cognitive bias may seem to have like a very similar definition, where as it says that it's a systematic error in thinking affecting how we process information, perceive it from others, and make decisions. So basically, it says that it can lead to irrational thoughts or judgments, and it's often based on our perceptions, memories, or individual and societal beliefs. Now, what is the difference between the two? Because both of them sound alike, right? So, bias is a general term for a tendency or like a prejudice, whereas cognitive bias is more like specifically mentioning that this bias exists. So, it involves in the systematic error in thinking that occur due to the brain's processing of information. It's just that cognitive bias is like a product of how our brain works, leading to more of a predictable or we could say an often unconscious deviations in our judgment and decision making. So, if we look into this entire thing in a simple words, we can see how biases are unconscious and their automatic processes are designed to make decision making quicker and more efficient. And cognitive biases can be caused by many things, such as shortcuts or social pressures and emotions. Um, is it clear until here? 1 second. Let me just check the chat box. Okay, someone asked for an example. Would you like an example for the difference between the two or just one specific point? Okay, the difference between the two. So, if we look into confirmation bias, for example, it comes under types of biases. So, confirmation bias is like we pay attention only to information that supports what we already believe. So, for example, let's say you have been eating a candy for you have been eating a candy for a really long time, and then your friend comes and goes like, I don't like this candy, but you keep on saying that no, this is really good. I've been eating for a really long time. So this is your cognitive bias saying that I like this because I have eaten this in my childhood, and you have to try it, or you could also give it a try without putting a judgment into it. Because you and your friends have tried it when you were younger, everyone liked it, so even you can try it. So that's more like a cognitive bias. Did that make sense, or do I have like? Would you like me to explain in a more different way? Okay. Um, So, with I hope the basic understanding between bias and cognitive bias makes sense over here. Now, before I move to the second slide, I would want to ask if biases aren't errors but survival shortcuts. Also, I forgot to mention that these mental shortcuts that I keep on saying, the other word for it is known as heuristics. Alright? So, the following question is that if biases aren't errors but survival shortcuts, can you think of one situation in your daily life where this shortcut actually helps you around? If you're not comfortable talking, please do drop a text. Anybody? What's like a shortcut that helps you work around your day quicker or that helps you? Anyone? Okay, if I'll give an example of myself. Okay, I'll just give an example of me answering to this question. So, I have moved to a new city recently, and it's very new. I don't know where to go, what to eat, but I'm really hungry and I'm tired of eating my home meals, right? So, and I also want to explore the place. I know McDonald's is the safest option that I could go for because I am aware of McDonald's. I have ate it before in my hometown and I really like McDonald's. It's comforting. Or I go to a new restaurant because just because like it's a new place, new restaurant, and it's fancy. I would like to explore more. So I need to make a decision between the two if I need to go to McDonald's and stick to my comfort zone, or do I go to a new restaurant and explore. So this is the McDonald's would be my shortcut to go. So is there anything like that that you have noticed you have done in your day-to-day life? So one said using pre-cut vegetables for a busy schedule for managing ready meals. Yes, I do that too. It helps a lot. It's the best shortcut I could go for rather than cooking a whole meal during the new day. Anyone else? It's okay. No pressure. If
Whenever
you feel like
there
please.
is dearth of time, like we are in short of time, we are going to chat GPT or going to Google search to see something high relate.
Oh my god, that's so true. AI has changed so much that in like ChatGPT or Gemini or any other AI platforms has become our new Google other than Google. It's really funny and sad at the same time. With this, we get to understand that these reframes of bias, like how we adapt, depends on understanding beyond seeing it as a mistake. Because, like, let's just say, if I take my example, my adaptiveness would be me exploring a new restaurant, and I wouldn't see it as also at the same time I wouldn't see it as a mistake just to go and have my own comfort food at McD, right? So our goal is basically not to delete these biases, but it is to understand when our brain's natural shortcuts help us and when they can hurt us. So that's the main concept of biases. Now, how does cognitive bias happen? So, cognitive biases they often appear in experiments, is what we have seen. So, researchers they basically set up situations that trick our mind, situations that don't usually happen in real life. So, these experiments they use logic-based or economic models to define what the right answer is, and anything different is called a bias. If you have to look into an example, let's just take magicians. All right, so what do? They understand how our minds work naturally, and they use that knowledge to create different illusions. So our brain it has been evolved to make quick and adaptive decisions for survival, but not to follow any perfect logical reasonings or answers to it. So when these natural ways of thinking are tested in artificial setups, they seem like errors or like, oh wow, what is it like? So Even in real life systems like gambling games, they're basically designed to take advantage of how our mind works. So instead of only blaming people for being biased, like because of that this happened, we should also design smarter systems that work with human thinking and not against it. So there was this research that specifically mentioned that how researchers must comprehend the cognitive biases to develop interventions when it comes to decision making and mental health. So this paper, which is there in the resources, is where the PDF is shared over there. Everyone can have a look at it and give it a read if interested, or I can share a link after the what do you say after the workshop. But it helps us to understand more on cognitive biases when it comes in talks of psychology. Now decision making, because we kept on talking about decision making, what to choose and all, right? So decision making, the basic definition that's given over here is that it's the process of selecting the best course of action from a set of alternative options to achieve a desired goal or objective. This decision making, it has its own different types in different sectors. Like in organization it's different looking, in psychology it looks different, in other sectors it looks different. Like the types of decision making, it's different in different organization, but in different sectors, but in the end of the day we end up coming to almost the similar meaning of everything. So for today, we'll look more into the psychology aspects of types of decision making. So one thing we can see in decision making, that it involves four interrelated phases. One is the explorative one, where we search for a potential alternative. For example, if in case McDonald's doesn't work for me, I choose KFC. So that's my second alternative for comfort, right? Second phase could be speculative, meaning identifying the factors that influence the decision problem. So my decision problem over here is, do I choose comfort food or do I choose exploring different food? If I go exploring, will it solve my problem, or but my mind would be like, but what if the food is not good and I really want to quench my hunger? So will I choose that, or do I just go with my comfort food and satisfy my hunger and call it a day? So that is speculative. Then third comes evaluative, is analyzing and comparing the alternative courses of action. So let's just say I actually do want to go explore. I go get my food. I'll be expecting, like, will I get what I've paid for? Will the quality be good? Will it not be good? But in back of my mind, I'm already sitting in the exploring a new restaurant. My mind is like, if I were in McDonald's, I shouldn't have thought a lot about this. So that's my evaluative type way. And selective is making the final choice of the best course of action, meaning in the end of the day, where do I want to go? So that's my final choice. So this is like a ultimate aim of decision making, is to find the option that is believed to fulfill the objective of the decision problem most in the most satisfying way compared to other alternatives. Now, if you have to look into the types of decision making as presented over here, there's rational, bounded, intuitive, and creative decision making. So, remember, I asked you if you were a rational decision maker or not. Now, we'll see which type you are in, because some have mentioned yes, some said no, some said sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not. So, with these types, maybe you may understand what type of decision maker you are. So, for rational decision making, it basically is a series of logical steps to help people understand the best possible choice that they can take. So, it sees the clear criteria, generating multiple alternatives, and carefully comparing options before deciding. However, sometimes many people, they can skip the key steps, especially the stage of exploring the different alternatives. So there was a research that was done where they found that 85% of decisions they were involved in no real search for alternatives, but successful decision makers on the other hand, they start with clear goals, they involve other alternatives, they keep an open search for different types of solutions, which made them feel a little bit more better. So while this theory sounds very useful and very understanding, the model also assumes that people are fully informed, they are unbiased, and they also seek for most of the optimal decision of what they're looking into, which is rarely true. Because in everyday situations, if we see, we face time limits. It's not like, okay, we have to think about, we have to go for work, we need to think, how do I get there fast? We don't see, will cab take me there fast, will auto take me there fast? Whatever comes first, we take that because we have to reach our workplace quicker, right? So time limits, there's emotional influence, and there's also a lot of information that is existing out there. If we take another example for something called as analysis paralysis, where no decision gets made, is best example I could give is when we are being indecisive of food. I'm sorry if I'm talking a lot about food examples because it's close to dinner time and I'm sure that everyone is looking forward for dinner. So bear with me for that, and I'm sorry in advance. So if we have to look into that, let's just say, uh, okay, today's dinner, I have a lot of things in my fridge. I have vegetables, I have pasta, I have rice, I have potatoes. Now there's like a lot there. What do I cook? I don't know what to cook. Time is running. It's I want to sleep also. I have to get up early as well. And I end up not able to decide what I have to cook because there's a lot of options in my fridge, and I ended up cooking Maggie because that's like the only option I could. I just had to do something really quick. So this is a small example of what analysis paralysis feels like. Now, if we go into the second type of decision making, that is bounded rationality, over here, the whole idea of it is that decision making recognizes the limitations of our decision making processes. Now, according to this, is that people, they know the limit of their options, they know how to manage it, and they choose the first acceptable alternative without um, looking or like extensively looking for other alternatives. So the important part of this type of decision make this approach of this decision making is that it's the tendency to satisfy, which refers more to the accepting the first alternative that meets your minimum criteria. uh, this approach, it was first coined by Herbert Simon from Satisfy and Suffice. If anyone wants to give it a read, please do. If we'll be also adding a little bit more about Satisfy and Suffice concept in our resources that we are offering uh, along with this workshop. So what does this mean? So let's just say there are many college graduates that do not go for like a national or international search for like potential job openings, right? So they just focus in the search of their limited geographical area, like what's around them, what's coming first, because it's job in the end of the day. You have to be placed somewhere to like exist. So to satisfy their job situation, they make a rational decision making. So the main difference is that rather than choosing the best option and maximizing the potential outcome of their job opening research, their little decision maker side saves the cognitive time for it and the effort for it, and they just accept whatever the first come first basis comes like. So this is how bounded rationality looks like. Then comes the third type, that is intuitive decision making. So over here, we make decision without conscious reasoning. We we just solely rely on instinct and experience. So most people, they admit to use their um, intuition, especially when decisions must be made quickly under pressure or uncertainty or time constraints. So many how do I give an example for this? Hmm. Okay, our mothers. So some or the other day it would be like where they uh, just have dal at home, and there is nothing else, there's no rice, there's no curry, but they have to make something really quick. So what do quickly? They find any possible fruit or vegetable, they mix everything and they make it as a new curry. Does it taste good or not is not the reason, is not the point over here. Are you fed in the end of the day is the main motive. What is the recipe for it? Nothing. They just toss in all random vegetables, they add the leftover dal, they make chapati, and then you have it in the end of the day. Are you fed? Yes. Is your stomach satisfied? Yes. So this is more of the intuition, that intuitive decision making, that okay, nothing is there. I have to make up something. So this is what I go. I will do all my years of cooking, add random things, and make a new dish that will never happen again. But it just feeds everybody in the house. So that's how they can um, look in. That's how we can look into intuitive decision making. And lastly is the creative decision making. So over here, the creative decision making model, it mostly focuses on generating new and imaginative ideas to solve different problems. So it's just like a foundation of innovation, but but creativity alone isn't really enough for implementing this innovation. And we have to also look at the practical part. So we see like over here 5 steps, right? So problem identification, sorry, problem recognition is very self-explanatory, which means like you recognize that there's a problem existing. And then the second step would be you gather information and you study the issue of it. And then the third would be you set the problem aside while the mind works subconsciously, like okay, what to do, what not to do. But like it's, you just keep it aside after you think a lot about it. And then comes all right, like I could do this, right? So that's your illumination part, like a aha moment kind of way, where you have like an insight moment about it. And then you see, do like a trial and error, like you test and apply and see if the idea works or not. So this is more like a creative decision with making, where it helps the individual to organize, they can adapt, they can innovate, and they can also stay very competitive in changing environments. um, I'll take a pause over here to take any questions. So, one is, could you explain between the bounded rationality and rational decision making? So, uh, I'll just rephrase both of them and give like a small example. Okay. So, for rational decision making, we can assume um, people being fully informed and they can consider all options and consequences around them. So the decision is, in that moment, the decision is made very logically, where they see both pros and cons of the situation and you maximize the benefit out of it. If I have to give an example, you are picking colleges. So let's just say you are picking colleges between Christ University and you are picking between Christ University and TIS. There are two different colleges, right? So you see pros and cons for both of them. How is the education over there? You talk to people. How is the placement if you get a placement? How's the exams like? How are the internships like? So you see pros and cons for both of them, and then go like, which one to choose? Which one has more of pros? You go with that. So this is how our rational decision making looks like. Now, bounded rationality is where the person recognize that, um, one second. Yeah, so basically it sees how, like how you recognize that you have very limited information, time, and the capacity to look into something, meaning like you satisfy yourself instead of going out there to have like to choose an option that is good enough rather than the absolute best of it. If we take the same example of the college picking, now let's just say if you are rational decision making, you choose between Christ and Tis. You like Tis more because the overall college environment over there is really good and the teachers are good and you get a lot more practical exposure compared to Christ. So you end up choosing Tis for rational decision making. But let's say your friend is in Christ. Now you haven't seen any colleges yet, you just know Christ exists because your friend is going over there, so you end up choosing Christ because that is efficient for you, that satisfies you, that's your friend is over there. So that's the difference between both, is what I can say. I hope I answered your question. Manish sir, was I understandable? Yes, okay. Now, can we move on, or does anyone have any more doubts? No? Okay. Now, we'll just take a small little break with a little activity, alright? Not really activity, just something I would want you all to interact with me. Okay, so it's just a small break between a lot of information. Okay, so I want a volunteer for this, one or two volunteers. We're a lot of people, so at least one volunteer. Just raise your hands. You don't need to speak out if you're not comfortable. You can just text, but I need one volunteer. Okay. So, hi Shruti. I will ask you a question and give you some options. Thank you for volunteering. Uh, After I'm done with asking the question and the options, I would want to know what your response would be for it. So accordingly, I will tell what's the after part of it. All right. I hope I made sense. Give me a thumbs up if I made sense. Oh, okay, okay. So it's just like a small interactive a question I wanted to ask, and I was asking if anyone could volunteer for it. So, would you like to volunteer? All right. If you're not comfortable speaking out, you can drop a text over here. Okay. All right. So, imagine this situation. All right. Let's just say, hypothetically, you have been offered two job opportunities where one pays more but it involves long hours and relocation, whereas the second one it pays less but allows you to have a work life balance and it keeps you near your family and you have to decide it by tonight. So uh, before I give you the options, were you there when I was explaining the different types of decision making? Okay. Um, if I explain the different types of decision making in like very brief manner, would you be able to answer it then? All right. So we were talking of four different types of decision making. That was rational decision making, where you logically think of an situation, weigh the pros and cons of it, and you figure out if what's the best option for it. That's rational decision making. Then there is wait, I'll just show the slide for you so it's easier for you. Then there is bounded rationality, where you don't really look into much information about an option and you just go what you think it's comfortable for you. Then comes intuitive decision making, where you rely on your previous experience and you just go with it because um, that's what you are aware of and that's what you would like to go for. And creative decision making is where you let the ideas settle in with you until you go like, oh yeah, I could go with this as well, right? Type of moment where you keep the problem aside and also work on it subconsciously, and then get like an insightful moment about it, and then you choose what like you do like a trial and error method to see if the idea of the decision inclines with the problem that you have. So I just briefly explained the four types. Did you understand the four types? All right. So with the scenario that I gave you, which type of decision making would you choose? Like rational, bounded, intuitive, or creative type? And why is it? Did you? Okay. You would integrate both rational and creative. That's the perfect answer. So, thank you so much for volunteering, and I will explain why this was brought up. So, just to like give a little insight, since you choose rational and creative, rational is you could obviously create both pros and cons lists of both the types of job, which one is better, and then you could analyze the options and pick it. And creative would be like you would look into the third option and then maybe negotiate a bit within the jobs and see which one is more freelance or hybrid role for you, right? So the whole reason I wanted this to be a little bit of an interactive session is just to make you all understand that in real life, like let's just say this situation was actually right now for you, where you had to pick between two different things that could change your life or your pathways, is that we don't stick to just one type of model that we have discussed until now. We discussed four, and it's not necessary that we just go rational. We don't just go bonded or bounded. We just don't go intuitive. We blend it all, and it depends purely on the context or the emotions and time that I mentioned before. And it's more on the awareness of how we decide is the first step to improving what we decide. So this is like the just a general idea on how or where we use these types of decision making. So thank you for volunteering. Now let's just like a very small thing to why I got decision making under cognitive bias is that we recognize how these biases affect our thinking, and it allows us to question and assumes and or seek new different perspectives, leading to more of a objective and sound decisions way. So this is why I brought in decision making, like a small concept of decision making over here. Now we'll look into a model that is called the dual process model. So over here, the model basically is the understanding of cognitive biases, where it is framed by the dual process model popularized by Daniel Kahneman, which describes two distinct modes of thinking. So system one that you can see over here is the intuitive and fast thinking, and system two is more of a deliberate slow thinking. So system one is where the mode is automatic, intuitive, and it operates with like very minimal effort. You rely on pattern recognition or the experiences that you have already been through, or the rapid judgments. So the intuition developed through clinical or professional experiences can be adaptive in complex situations where timely decisions is very very necessary. We can take surgeons. Let's just say they're performing a surgery, and one small uh, nick could make them think instantly to what is the solution to solve it. So that's the thinking fast way, or the system one. Thinking two or system is thinking slow, or system two is basically the more conscious, deliberate, and slow way of your analytical tasks and complex problem solving. So the whole process over here is associated with your metacognition, which means thinking about your thinking. Basically, the active self monitoring and management of your own thoughts and processes. So, um, if we take another example for this, is you are doing an assignment and you have to see how to do the assignment, what marks are given, or maybe if your boss has given you some work, you see what that work is, what you need to do, what needs to be avoided, what needs to be highlighted. So you slowly think it, you see analytically how to solve it. If there are any problem solving, you try to clarify those queries, you talk to other people. So that's your thinking slow type. And it's a very common misconception that system 1 is the sole source of bias, and system 2 is the logical mechanism that is designed to correct it. But in reality, almost all cognitive processes involve a blend of both of these systems. Just like how decision making, we blend all of them and we end up coming same as this. This is literally how we process things. So, for example, if we take confirmation bias as well, we manifest when system 2 is used deliberately to analyze new information, to express or to justify your beliefs, which is already being established by system 1. So, the effective cognitive discipline requires the dual program of this management, the strategy between activating both system 2 when needed and also refining the automatic patterns within the system 1. So, all together, we get feedback out of it. So, I hope I made sense with this model. If anyone has any doubts, please put in the chat box, or in the end of the session, workshop, I will answer all. Since we're running out of time, I will just complete all the slides and then I'll take questions in the end, alright? Okay. Now we look into core biases. So I have been talking a lot about confirmation bias without explaining what it is. So let's get to know confirmation bias now. Confirmation bias is basically the tendency to search for, or like to search for something or interpret it or recall the information in a manner that confirms or supports your existing values or your prior beliefs. So this effect is mainly used when dealing with deeply beliefs or emotional charged issues. So if we take for an example, this is also something called as echo chamber effect. All right. So over here, if we look into the politicians or social discourse, the individuals they often choose news sources or follow social media accounts that exclusively reinforce their existing viewpoints regarding topics about anything, be it political, global warming, etc. So, this self imposed information prevents your logical consideration of all facts and results. It's basically you are listening to only one-sided story. You follow to only that one-sided story. But when the second side story is coming, you won't listen to it that much because it doesn't align with what your viewpoint is. Okay, just give me a second. Okay, so that is confirmation bias. Now the second bias is hindsight bias. It's in simpler words, I would say I knew this. I knew it all along. Type bias. Basically, you overestimate one's ability or the ability of others to have predicted an event or the outcome of it, which is already known to you. It's more like a form of memory distortion where where the past recollections are unconsciously aligned with the current knowledge, or when the making of the outcomes seem very inevitable in retrospect. So it's very like a post event critic kind of way. For example, if we look at Conjuring movie, uh, some horror critics would go like, I already knew it's going to be bad. I didn't like the past few Conjuring movies. This is just like a new rom-com kind of way. I saw it coming a long ago when the teasers came. That's why I did not go. So this is like, I knew it. So why bother going into it and then seeing it? Maybe for some they might like it, some may not like it. It's they end up projecting their views as what hindsight bias is. Third one is anchoring bias. It is the tendency for how people rely excessively on the first piece of information received to them. So the anchor part is the assessments, or it estimates or the judgments, even if that initial information is irrelevant or not. So it creates more like a crucial reference point against which all other data is evaluated. Like, let's say this something happened to me recently where for Durga Puja I got information that this place is doing the aarti and everything, so go there. So I was like, oh, okay, fine, cool. It was on the 10th day. I went and I saw everything was closed. Did I check on it before? Did I see if it's still open or not? Did I plan myself properly? No. I just was like, I need to get ready. I need to go. I'll go there. I'll have a good time and I'll come back. But what happened to me? I went there and I just saw everything being closed, and little did I know the aarti, the Visarjan and everything got over by 2:30. So that was me anchor biasing the information I got at first time basis. Now, the last bias is availability heuristic. Before I explain this, I mentioned what heuristic means. So, can someone um, make me understand what it is, or uh, maybe like answer it? You can speak it out or drop a text. What does heuristic mean? Anybody? It's alright. So heuristic basically means mental shortcuts. Like that comes immediately into your yes, mental shortcuts. Thank you. So it's your recall system that comes really quickly whenever you have to think into something, and just works well at that moment. Like you work really quick. That's your mental shortcut. So the availability heuristic is basically where individuals they estimate the likelihood or frequency of an event based on how easily examples of that event come to mind. So it's like, as I mentioned, it's a ease of recall, often dictated by factors like your recency, your emotional impact, or even your statistical frequency about it. Uh, let's just say you have COVID, we could take that as an example. We have seen a lot of cases coming by from other countries and everything. And in India, we were like, oh, it wouldn't come yet. But also, subconsciously, we were aware that's going to come. So, what did we do? We immediately went, we bought the resources because that was our, it may happen, it may not happen, but also it's better to, like, be there before, like, be resourceful beforehand kind of way. So these are like some core biases that we can look into. Now we'll look more into the psychotherapy part, the assessment part of cognitive biases. We understood what the concept is, we understood the umbrella of it. This a lot under cognitive biases if you have to look into it. But now we'll focus specifically on the psychotherapy part, or how it affects clinicians or clients. All right. So, in the psychotherapy, if we see, it influences more on the errors of judgment and in the treatment aspect. So you recognize and then you address these biases by psychoeducating yourself, or just like educating yourself or reflecting it, supervision from others, or just feedback from other people or the client themselves. It can help the therapist make more of a accurate or balanced decision or judgment, where because there was like a lot of research that is needed to understand how often these biases occur and how best to reduce their harmful effects in therapy. Again, this research paper, I'll talk a little bit more about this, but I'll be sharing this in all the resources that we are providing along with the certificate. So please look into it if you're interested. um, Basically, this paper, it argued more on that therapists are not immune to the same mental shortcuts and emotional biases that affects everyone. So these biases, they can subtly wrap up how therapists assess or interpret and treat their clients. So like these biases with stories from practice, they just make us understand more about how biases work, and reflecting through it and seeking the feedback could be a better option rather than just like going with what they think. So they could go by anchoring where the therapist fixates on their first impression, and or the confirmation bias where the therapist looks for information that supports their initial hypothesis, or the availability bias where the judgment is influenced by recent case that they encountered, so they would assume that the other person also has the same reasoning. Then there is base rate neglect where the therapist ignores how common or rare a condition is in favor of a dramatic diagnosis, because again this is something that they have seen before, so they're like, oh, maybe it's the same, but they never know that it could be, there could be another root cause factor. For this base rate neglect, keep that in mind, because we will look more into it in not in detail, I would say, but you would understand why I would say to look into this. And this overconfidence where the therapist is too certain about their interpretation of predictions, it sometimes could maybe because of how well educated they are, or the practice time they have, or maybe just because they have been getting a lot of compliments on how good they are, so they may misinterpret because of the overconfidence. And then there's premature closure where the therapist stops considering alternative explanations too early, because some therapists they go by the book, and because of that they don't look at other alternatives, and they may end up misdiagnosing a client. And then there is the sunk cost where the therapist continues on the treatment plan because of the time already invested, even if it's not helping. There was this one case that I've seen where this therapist was using only one approach, that was CBT, for like 8 consecutive months, and the client himself was telling that it wasn't working on him, but whatever kind of way. So that's like sunk costs. And lastly is visceral reactions. The therapist's emotions like anger, disgust, or fear unduly influence their judgments. So sometimes countertransference happens, or maybe the whatever the client is telling, it doesn't sit well with the therapist's morals and values. So instead of referring them to someone else, they just keep it to themselves and then they judge them and they just sit with it because they're getting money. So please never do that if you are a practicing client, I mean therapist, because it affects the client a lot, which we do not want. Um, we One more thing I would like to point out is the bidirectional impact between the therapist's judgment versus the client's cognition. So the cognitive bias, it basically influences both the sides, where the therapeutic equation of like creating a bidirectional risk profile. So for the therapists, it could be more on the anchoring, confirmation, and the fundamental attribute. If we take like for an example, you you would see like there'll be a counselor must actively avoid allowing a crime previously documented to diagnose, to anchor their current assessment, to recognize more of a static diagnosis that can help them understand the evaluation. So that's something the therapist should not be doing, but they end up doing as their point of judgment. The other part is from the client side of view is that the maladaptive patterns, it guides the behavior or their emotional responses and their self perception. It's basically sustaining conditions like anxiety and depression, and the therapeutic process is heavily invested in identifying and correcting these distortions to a more flexible and realistic thinking. So this is just how there's like impact both ways. Now, on the assessment part, I won't go in detail for each and every assessment because of the time constraint. But some of the assessments which were open, we have added in the resources. You can look into it. But if you would like me to have another workshop related specifically on these assessments, we could have one. So for now, we'll just understand which one works where. All right. So we'll first focus on the therapist's part. So we use something called cognitive bias awareness scale. So tools like the cognitive bias inventory and bias recognition and mitigation in clinical reasoning, it basically helps therapists to recognize how common cognitive biases such as confirmation or anchoring influence their own decisions. So these assessments are often used in training or supervision sessions to promote more of a reflective reflective or a bias aware thinking in clinical judgment. Then the second one would be a reflective practice and self-assessment tool. So this measures like the reflective practice questionnaire and self-practice or self-reflection exercises, which basically encourages the therapist to think more critically about their own assumptions and the emotional reactions and reasoning patterns, and also the cognitive reflection test. It complements this by helping therapists practice slowing down their intuitive thinking to make more deliberate and rational judgments. And the other area we could look is the supervision and structured feedback tools. So this is a really good reflective supervision checklist and therapist self-evaluation forms, which guides the therapist to question their own interpretations and emotional influences when they're trying to treat a client. So they promote like an open discussion about how their personal values or first impressions it could affect their therapy decisions. So this reduces the risk of biasness when they come in the context of clinical reasoning. Now we end with the therapist, we go into the client's aspect. So for the clients, we basically work on the biased thinking through cognitive behavioral tools. So the cognitive distortion scale and dysfunctional attitude scale, it the assesses the client's maladaptive beliefs. Also, we can also look into the automatic thoughts questionnaire, which measures the reoccurring negative thoughts to why they conform to the bias that they're going for. And there's also the Beck Cognitive Insight Scale, which helps the clients to see more of their awareness of thinking errors. So together, all these tools it helps the client to recognize and correct their distorted, biased thought patterns, which affects their emotions and behavior. Now, there are obviously some interventions that help both assessment and intervention for both client and the therapist. So, one comprehensive method is like debasing cleaning programs and metacognitive reflection and insight therapy. So, this integrates both awareness and corrective strategies. So, they train both the therapists and clients to think about their thinking. Remember, I mentioned about metacognitive. It's basically thinking about your thinking, right? And this enhances your insight for your insight to reduce your error-prone reasoning. So many CBT and DBT supervisions, CBT is cognitive behavior therapy and dialectical behavior therapy. These supervision programs, they recently they have been including more of bias awareness modules where the therapists they review recorded sessions to identify what could be the potential bias movements to give more of a creative feedback loop for continuous improvement. So this is the assessment part and the psychotherapy part. We have come to the end of the session where we just have a small case study to look into, and then I will be open for questions. So I'll just read into the case study, and I'll be asking some questions. So please be as interactive as possible. This will just help you have more insight about the entire workshop. All right. So Ria, a 22-year-old college student, presented with fatigue, low mood and impaired concentration during the intake assessment. The attending clinical psychologist, Dr. Meera, provisionally diagnosed major depressive disorder, attributing symptom onset to a recent interpersonal breakup. Initial treatment focused on psychotherapy intervention for depression. Subsequent follow up revealed persistent symptoms inconsistent with depression. A comprehensive medical evaluation identified hypothyroidism as the primary contributor to a clinical presentation. Did the case study make sense to all? Please give a thumbs up if it did. Okay. So, since you all understood the case study, I would like to ask you guys that what information do you think Dr. Meera focused most on, and was there anything she might have overlooked at? If you're comfortable opening your mics and speaking, you're free to do that, or you can drop it in the text box. Drop a message in the text box. Let me know if I have to repeat the question. Yes, Shruti.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah, I think she overlooked on her hypothyroidism and she focused more on her depressive symptoms.
Yes, that's correct. Um, what did she focus more on? If you could answer that part.
She focused more on her depressive symptoms and her interpersonal breakup and helping her go through that.
Yes, that's perfect. So, as you correctly mentioned, and also Sunita, ma'am, you have also mentioned on how doctor focus more on the emotional and behavior symptoms. So, if the observation of what's her name? Yes, Dr. Meera's, is that the analysis of her decision making process was more on the anchoring bias, where she overly relied on the initial information, that was the breakup and the low mood, the fatigue, and everything, and also the availability bias, which was as a clinician, she was exposed to multiple cases of depression among college students, who increased the understanding that okay, maybe she might have depression. Just give me a second. Sorry. So if Dr. Meera could have identified that during her reflective supervision, if she had, that's when she could see how she can re-evaluate the assessment and strategize it and see more of an alternative explanation. If it's brought up to her that it's not depression, it could be something else. Okay. My second question would be, what could have gone wrong if the hypothyroidism was never checked, and how might this affect the therapeutic alliance or treatment outcome? I hope the question made sense. We just have two more questions and then we'll be done with this workshop. So please try to initiate answers if possible. So I'll just repeat the question again. What could have gone wrong if the hyperthyroidism was never checked? And how might this affect the therapeutic alliance or treatment outcome? Yes, that's correct. The misdiagnosis and delay in the treatment. So, as you rightly mentioned, the cognitive bias when it came to her way was the misdiagnosis, the delayed treatment, and also the suboptimal therapeutic outcomes where she just said it's depression. So, in this case, the initial bias led to a delay in the recognition of the medical condition and also the prolonging symptom burden. She did not ask, is the hypothyroidism affecting something? Is she taking any medication for it? Have you noticed any mood changes or any appetite changes before you took, if in case she was taking medications before that or after that? None of them was asked. She just straight off took one pointer of her whole session. So these type of errors, they underscore the need for more of a structured decision making and the bias strategies when it comes to like the clinical environments. Now, one last question I would ask is, what could have gone wrong if the hyperthyroidism, sorry, what would you like to mention or uh, I'm, I'm lost of words. I'm really sorry. All right. So, what strategies could you give for Dr. Meera that she can reflect on herself? So, if you were Dr. Meera and you were seeing yourself in this position, how would you work on it? Can you elaborate more on contributing to all the factors? Like, how would if okay, let's just say the client hasn't mentioned about anything, the client just came today, told what she had to tell, she leaves, Mira writes down in her book, but then she writes it as a depression. So if you were to supervise Dr. Mira and saying that, like, I think you need to look more into the case, so how would you make Dr. Mira self reflect herself to um, to the way she is handling the case, and how will you let her avoid making the same error in the future? Okay, so I think she misdiagnosed the client very early on and looking at it on the surface issues rather than going deeper into everything that has been going with the client. Yes, that's one factor. And second one that was given was by giving her examples against her conclusion and politely making her reconsider external and internal factors affecting Dia. Yes, both of you have answered perfectly right. So, some strategies, including what both of you have mentioned, is one is the structured decision making, where she could have used a checklist which included the medical causes before confirming a psychological answer to what Ria is going through. A second could be a post-session bias log, which might have helped her question like, "Am I assuming this too quickly?" As Shruti rightly mentioned, and also a peer might have asked like, "Could this be something medical?" Like, I'm not sure. I hope Yashi. I hope I pronounced her name right. So as she mentioned on like telling in a polite way and saying like a peer could say mention that, could you see this, could this be something medical or see in another point of view. And lastly could be maybe would like a bias awareness training could help her increase Mira's readiness to recognize her anchoring biasness in future cases. So I hope, what do you say? I hope that this case study made sense. And with this, we come to an end of the workshop. Just like a small note is that cognitive bias is, it doesn't imply about being careless. It's just that we all are human beings, and the skill that lies within us, it's more of our own mind, which like before it shortcuts to your clients, so it's very okay if in case anyone has been misdirected. So we're not cutting anything, we're not saying something is bad, something is good. It's just the way we go ahead with things is what needs to be looked into. um, I'm open for questions. So if anyone has anything, I did realize I went too fast in between. So please do let me know if I have to repeat anything or if you want any pointers. The PPT will be shared in the resources. The assessments that I mentioned will be shared in the resources. The research studies will be shared in the resources. Any and other related information related to cognitive biases or psychotherapy, everything will be shared in the resources. That will be given to you along with the certificate if anyone would like it. Another thing to remind you all is that, not remind, is just to say that there's another workshop that's coming on the 15th of October from 5:30 to, sorry, 5 to 6:30. It is on MBCR, even for 129 rupees. If you, it's a free workshop. If you want resources and worksheets, then or certificate under 129, you'll get all of that. MBSR is basically mindfulness based stress reduction. So the workshop will be on this, and you'll get a lot of insight about it. So please do join if you're interested. Thank you so much. Anyone have any doubts? Thank you for attending. Um, yes. Okay. I'm assuming no one has any doubts. Thank you everyone for your feedback. I'm glad everyone understood and enjoyed it.